Thank you very much for joining us this evening, afternoon, or morning for some of you, possibly. Welcome to our Zoom presentation, where you will discover the enchanting worlds of both Nepal and Tibet and stories about Everest, courtesy of my man, Tashi. My name is Adam Walter. I'm the interim CEO currently for Cheesemans Ecology Safaris. I'm also the marketing director. I'll be the host for today's Zoom. I'm also joined by Patty Collins, our expert wildlife safari coordinator for our Nepal and Tibet trips. She handles all the bookings and traveler experiences for those particular two trips. And finally, I'm very excited to have Tashi Tenzing with us here today. He's the grandson of Tenzing Norgay, right? Am I saying that right? So your grandfather was the first to ascend Everest with Sir Edmund Hillary back in 1953. Tashi, you've climbed Everest 3 times. Yep, 3 times.
Correct. Yeah.
And you've summited a myriad of other peaks. Tashi's a guide for us here at Cheesemans Ecology Safaris. He's led a ton of trekking and mountaineering expeditions to Nepal and Tibet. He's also a big motivational speaker, and he's spoken about his experiences in the mountains to audiences all over the world. Tashi, he'll be sharing his thoughts, insights, and expertise with us today, and he's going to explain a little bit more about what you can expect when you book a trip with him to Nepal or Tibet through Cheesemans Ecology Safaris. Before we get started, I want to remind everybody, just because we do have such a large number of people here in this group, to keep your microphones muted. If you do have questions, we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So if you can't hang on to your question till the end, totally fine. Be sure to put it in the chat. Patty and I are going to be monitoring the chat so that Tashi can answer at the end, and we can just turn him loose to storytell and do what he does best. So without further ado, I introduce to you guys Tashi Tenzing.
Adam, and thank you, Patty, and thank you everyone for joining this this morning session for me and late afternoon session for you all. This particular journey to Nepal and Tibet, let's divide into two sections. Obviously, Nepal, you have some of you have been there or you haven't been there. Tibet probably is it's a different story. So we'll start with Nepal first. And then we'll go into Tibet because it does have a very good sequence of why we are joining these two trips for you. There is a particular reason because of acclimatizing your body and your breathing into Nepal, and then finally going into high altitude into Tibet. That makes it much more sensible and more safety for us to take you to high altitude after acclimatizing in Nepal first, and then going into Tibet. The Nepal journey trip, I think we've called it the tracking and trekking. It has a perfect name. Obviously, Nepal's is one of the most interesting destinations for a lot of people, but a lot of people don't have much idea. People think that Nepal is only for climbing mountains, like high mountains. Obviously, we have over 8,000 meters. We have 8 of the highest mountains in the world. And we obviously have a lot of climbers coming in to climb. So a lot of people who are not really climbers think that, oh, I should not go to Nepal because it's mainly for big expeditions and things, which is completely wrong, because Nepal has adventure for all physical ability people, and also all different ages to enjoy the beauty of of the Himalayan grandeur mountains, the villages, the people. We have over 35 different ethnic groups speaking different languages. We have the moderate terrain, we have the low terrain, we have the extremely high terrain. So this trip was designed especially also to see the wildlife, because Cheesemans Ecology Safaris, we very much stress on wildlife and conservation and looking after, and seeing wildlife in their own natural ways. And Nepal has the Royal Bengal tigers, and since the time of the kings in the early 1800s, there used to be a lot of shooting when the British had come to India, and they had come to Nepal to shoot these tigers and rhinos, one-horn Asian rhinos. But later in 1976, the late king opened the national park and stopped all the killing of all the animals and trying to have a good conservation and preserve and and so that people can come and see the tigers and the one-horn Asian rhinos. So we had very less tigers, but now after nearly 25, 30 years, we've got nearly over 250 tigers roaming in a nearly just under 1,000 square kilometer national park, which is Chitwan and Bardia. But we chose Bardia because Bardia is the most interesting place where you can see lots of tigers. There are over 150 tigers roaming in this incredible, nice national park where we drive in our jeeps, Land Rovers, and we can see the tigers in their natural habitats, and they are extremely really incredible cats to see live. I mean, you will be speechless when you actually see them when you're about 10 meters or 15 meters or 20 meters, 100 meters to see the tigers. In the last group, we saw incredible tiger with three cubs sitting there, and actually a tiger literally coming and chasing over 100 spotted deers, and the roar of the tiger literally takes you back. You just keep really quiet. There's nothing you can do, and it's just incredible to be part of that that attack mode by a tiger when the tiger really wants to go and kill or protect its cubs and so on. So the Bardia National Park has incredible wildlife diversity. We have over 800 species of birds. We have some great birds from the horn. For bird watchers, it's really beautiful. We have the hornbill, we have the the gray hornbill, the greater hornbills. We have many species of incredible birds in there, and we have the migratory birds coming in. And we also have the one-horned Asian rhinos. We have leopards. We have so all sorts of animals are in this jungle, and looking for tigers and looking for wildlife in the Nepal part. It's not like in Africa. In Africa, you have the wild, open, landscape where you can drive, and it's incredible views. Whereas in Nepal, you have to work very hard. Our naturalists and ourselves, we work extremely hard to look for these animals because it's we have a different type of forest in Nepal. We have the subtropical forest, the monsoon forest. We have the open forest. So it is a challenge to see such wildlife, but it's very exciting. And normally we are driving in this vehicle, and we try to keep our conversation very less as possible. And suddenly we hear the monkeys and the deers making their alarm call, and we all stay very quiet, and then we look for the call where it's coming from, and then we go and it gets really exciting, and then suddenly you see this massive tiger walking on the main track, heading towards trying to mark his territory every morning, because they do have to walk 2 or 3 times a day around their own area. They've got over 30 to 40 kilometers of their own territory, so they need to walk around. So we are very particular, and we also have our own naturalist. We keep a record of every day where the tigers are and what they're doing, and so it's a really good way of seeing these tigers. And also we have a fantastic warden there who makes sure that these tigers are well protected, and even if there are man-eating tigers there, which we had one in the jungle, and they are brought back into the national park, and then they kept in there, and then they are sent to a zoo or somewhere to be more safer for them. Because so far we don't have any man-eating tigers in the jungles of Nepal, and the wardens are very particular about those issues, because tigers sometimes do roam around outside their own territory, and so especially old tigers who are not really capable of hunting. So the easiest way is to go into the village, and so they are completely removed from there, and they're taken into a proper protection area. So, so the tiger conservation has become really, really well managed by the wardens of Nepal. And today we have a large number of tigers in our jungle, which is the most exciting part to see when you come into Bardia National Park. So after the national park, where we spend about 3 to 4 nights there, and from there we head off to a beautiful place called Pokhara. Pokhara is about 900 meters above sea level. It has one of the most beautiful lake with the grandeur vista of the Annapurna ranges. Annapurna 1 is one of the first 8,000-meter peaks to be climbed by Maurice Herzog, which is a French climber in 1951. And it really stands incredibly there. And with Annapurna 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the other mountains, and it's really spectacular to see that. And then we do a 3 days very moderate hike around the Annapurna range. We have Sherpas to help you. We have porters who carry your bags. Bags are limited to about 15 kgs, less than 15 kilos. And then we have this.
I'm sorry, I had to interrupt you. Are you trying to screen share? I don't know if you're trying to show images right now.
Just right now. You
okay. So when you're ready to screen, I'm sorry for interrupting. When you're ready to screen share, I got to pass the hosting to you too. So just let me know. I don't want to step on your pictures.
We can show your screenshots, no problem. Yeah.
Okay.
From there onwards, the trek is designed for you so that we walk about 3 to 4 to 5 hours a day, and in between there's lots of stops. There's also a lot of time to see wildlife on this trail. We have wonderful bird life, like the raptors are flying in that high altitude areas, like the lammergers, the Himalayan griffins, and the Egyptian vultures, and other bulbul bushes and birds are there. And so I know a lot of people will ask me a question about the trekking part, but I'll explain to you very easily. We have a very comfortable lodges, which is called the luxury lodges, and they're all attached bathrooms. You have hot and cold showers. You have a lovely bed to sleep in. No more sleeping in tents and sleeping bags. So you have this wonderful veranda outside your room where you can see the mountains, like the Fishtail Mountains, the Annapurna ranges, and our staff brings you fresh tea and coffee for you in your bed. We even give you a wake up morning bed tea in bed. So it's a real comfort. It's a real comfortable way of trekking. Not the days where I remember we used to hike and we used to have over 30 porters with mesh tents and toilet tents and early morning cooking and having hot towels in your face. But now you have all that comfort in your rooms. So these are called the luxury lodges that we have, and you can enjoy those facilities. And then we walk about, say, in the morning after civilized time, at 8 o'clock, we leave having a good, heavy, hearty breakfast. And also, I like to explain that if you have any dietary requirement, just let the Cheesemans know, and we will do our best to cater according to your dietary requirements. The walking is along the foothills of the Himalayas. So the foothills normally starts from 1,200 meters. It goes up to at least about 2,500 meters. So I'm talking in meters, so I'm sure you can convert that into feet. So the highest we go is about just under 2,000 meters. So that way, this is very critical for us to acclimatize so that when we fly into Lhasa, into Tibet, which is about 12,500 feet, when we fly from Kathmandu, which is only 4,500 feet, to 12,500 feet. So when we go to Tibet, we will be well acclimatized, and we will not have the tiredness and a little bit of headache so onwards in Tibet itself. So this 3 to 4 days hiking is really important for us to get our body acclimatized well. So by the time we get up to the highest point at a place called the Himalayan Lodge at Gandrup, this is the most beautiful village of the Gurung community. The Gurungs are one of the famous Gorkha fighters. I'm sure you've heard about the Gorkha soldiers who are fierce in fighting for the British Army. And they are So they come from this particular village, and it's like a hamlet, uh, situated just above the dense forest, and you can see the Annapurna South, the Fishtail Mountains, and they're really beautiful people. They're so simple, and we can go and visit their museum, and we can do a day hikes, or you can just sit and relax in the garden of the Himalayan Lodge and just take in as much as you can of the grandeur of the mountains of Annapurna ranges sitting right next to you. So these 3 to 4 days is really important for us to acclimatize and enjoy the walk and see the bird life, see the cultural part of the Gurung communities, and then also have some time to talk to our porters and to our Sherpas, who are very happy to help you anytime, and they are ready. They are watching you every step. They will come and hold their hands if you have a little bit difficulty to walk, and I'm there also to assure that everything is safe, and and we are enjoying ourselves. So onwards. So after that, we head back into Pokhara, which is another beautiful lake again, and then from there we go to a Tiger Mountain Lodge, which is right up above the Pokhara Valley, which is about just under 1,200 meters above sea level. And this particular lodge has incredible scenery of the Fishtail Mountains. So you can have a dip in the pool. And also we do lots of village walks around there. And there's also a good sort of bird life. If you're into birdies, you will really enjoy this particular a small different sort of village of up in the just above the Pokhara region. So Nepal has a really varieties of lots of exciting, you know, entertainment to entertain you. You know, we have the wildlife, we have the mountain people, we have the great mountain ranges, we have the luxury lodges for you to really enjoy yourself. And at any time you have any issues, you can just I'm there 24/7 to help you to make sure that you are enjoying your trek. But the most important thing sometimes is just to sit and in some place up in the mountains and just take in as much as you can, because sometimes pictures or photographs don't really justify the massive the grandeur of the Himalayas, because they're so big. I mean, the mountains that you have back home compared to our mountains are really massive. I mean, they are over 27,000 to 28 or 29,000 feet above sea level. So it is, I mean, they are the highest mountains in the world, and all these mountains are named after gods and goddesses. So they are spiritual mountains to us, and they are worshipped by the village people. And there is also a different sort of a religion that practice in the mountain areas. The animisms are practiced where they worship rocks and mountains, and so we have to be very careful when we enter someone's house, or especially when most Nepalese people are very happy to welcome you into their homes. You don't have to make an appointment as such. You just say namaste and hello, and they're really happy to bring you into their home, share their, if they want to make a cup of tea for you, they can make. But only one thing we have to be very careful is their fireplace. We do not throw anything in their fireplace where they cook their food. The fireplace is very, very, it has to be kept very clean, and it's a very ritual place where they do their morning ceremony and prayers. And so there are a few things that we have to pay respect. Otherwise, most Nepalese people are really open to you all the time. They're very, very humble. They're very simple, and they really like to know your family history, where you come from. They love to see your children, your grandchildren. They're very family-oriented people. So it makes it much easier for you to even communicate with them when you sit down with them. So that's how the people of Nepal are. I mean, Nepal is probably one of the poorest country in the world, but Nepal is the first country in great human spirit. I mean, they have that incredible touch that touches your heart and touches you. And you. I know the mountains are always there, but the people are the ones who really make your journey so special, because you have found memories of that wonderful smile that you you see, and then you meet the children and you talk to them. There are schools there. So Nepal has incredible varieties of activities and to offer you. When you come to Kathmandu, we have this great city of three cities of the Kathmandu city, the Bhaktapur city, the Patan city. These are the cities ruled in the early 1600 by the Malla dynasty, and their architecture of wood carving is phenomenal. I mean, it's so beautiful that you can actually go and watch them. And so the Kathmandu city also has incredible diversity of people living in there. But the ethnic group who used to live there called the Newars. They are half Tibetans, half Buddhist, and half Hindu. And because Nepal is purely a Hindu country, 80% of the country is Hindu, and then the rest are Buddhist, and then we have a small section of Christian and Muslims. But these Newari craftsmen are incredible. So when you go into Patan city, you can actually watch them, how they make these wonderful statues and from copper and brass and woodwork. And they are very skillful sculptures. And it passes down through 3 or 4 generations. So that's very interesting that they keep this particular technique that they have how to do wood carving through 3 or 4 generations, and the city itself is very very lively, and everybody do speak English there, so you can have a quite incredible discussion with them. And there is actually an option there where if you like to do a mountain flight over Mount Everest. Obviously, Everest is the highest mountain we have in Nepal, and we have a lot of people coming every year in the season of in the spring season. And this year it is the 70th anniversary of my grandfather and Hillary's ascent. So we had a big celebration to celebrate all the work that we have done in the last 70 years, or after the ascent of Everest, with Tenzing and Hillary, where we've got over 30 schools up in the Sherpa areas. So we had lots of fantastic gatherings and meetings and dinner parties to enjoy the 70th anniversary. But this Everest flight really it flies for 1 hour. It goes round Everest and it shows you the entire Himalayan ranges of the Nepal Himalayas. So this is optional there for you. But if you're flying into Tibet with us, you probably don't need to do this flight because we actually literally fly over Mount Everest and go down into Lhasa. So that flight itself is very spectacular also, So so after spending about 14, 15 days in Nepal, seeing the entire wildlife, the hiking part of it, the meeting the people and doing the sightseeing of the Kathmandu Valley, and from there we are ready now to head into Lhasa, the great city of Tibet. I also call it the roof of the world because Tibet, till 1949, it had independence. So after that, the Chinese took over with the Cultural Revolution. So now Tibet and Nepal has this great history. Especially one is religion, the Buddhism, how it came from. Secondly, it is the historical part of Everest. A lot of people don't know that. They only see that Everest was climbed from Nepal by Hillary and Tenzing, and that was it. No, 30 years back, the great history of Everest started from Tibet, you see. And the third part is the nomadic people of Tibet. There are still people who live in nomadic lifestyle, grazing yaks and herding and into this great Tibetan plateau. And the last part is the people of Tibet. They're so religiously involved into Buddhism and follow the truth, the 4 parts of Buddha, mainly into compassion and tolerance. So these are very exciting part of Tibet itself. And for those who haven't been to Tibet, I mean, you must visit once in a lifetime because it is so spiritual. And you can see that when you actually get into Lhasa itself. So after taking a 45 minutes flight from Kathmandu to Lhasa, when you get into Lhasa, we spend about the rest of the afternoon, we go into a place called Sadang. Sadang is the valley where the birth of Tibetan people started. The history of Tibetan people started. the eating of barley started. The first king of Tibet came from there. So that's where we start our program, right from the birth of the Tibetan history and the spirituality of the Tibetan race and the people it started. So there's the first monastery there called Samya. It was the first monastery built in the early 1800s, early in the 12th century. See, so this is very exciting for you to cross the great Yamdokso River, which is the longest river in the world, which starts from Mount Kailash from the west all the way down to the east and comes down to the Bay of Bengal and into the Indian Ocean. It's also known as the Brahmaputra River. It is a very exciting river that we cross through in the boats, and then see the Samya monastery. From there we start our journey, literally, and then we go into the Chokang, which is where the first king of Tibet was crowned. So, and the first eating of barley started from growing barley in this incredible, beautiful valley of Chedang Valley. So, more of this religious part and the religion I will explain to you every evening while we're having dinner, because religion is a way of life for the Tibetan people. It's not a proper religion. So, and there's a lot of factors of the Hyana and the Mahayana. There are many different sects. So this thing can get quite complicated to you all, but we will start from the basics and then go slowly so that you don't get confused, because it is quite intense. Some of you who are following Buddhism or doing spiritual practice of who have masters, you will understand. But for the lay people, I will explain to you very simply so that you will understand this easily, because it's very important to understand these type of the way of life of the religion of Tibet. Because when you enter a monastery, there are many massive figures who are standing, and the entire people of Tibetan are worshipping these Buddhas. Buddha also we have in different forms. We have the Compassion Buddha, we have the Guru Rinpoche, the founder of the Tantric, and then we have many other deities because we follow in the Mahayana way of life. So these are very complicated issues, but it's very easy to understand when I explain to you who they are. Because the birth of Buddhism started from India, from the Hinduism itself. The great scholars from India went into Tibet in the early 6th century and spread the religion called Buddhism, the compassion and the tolerance. Before that, they had the born religion, which is completely like worshipping of animism and doing black magic and those sorts of things. Today, there are still a group of people who practice this sort of way of life there. But the majority of the Tibetans follow the Buddhism, the way of Buddha's teachings, So then from there we go into Lhasa, the great forbidden city, which is an incredible city. Obviously, it's changed now since 1941. The Chinese are taking over. But, you will probably ask me why, are the Tibetan people that are really suffering? I mean, I've been there now for over 25 to 36 years, visiting every year Tibet. Even my grandfather was born in Tibet in the shadows of Everest. But the life has changed for the Tibetan people. It has become a bit more easier for them. And obviously, over 1 million Tibetans were massacred at the time when the Chinese took over, and so many fled and have become refugees. And there are so many Tibetans now living in America, Europe, and other parts of the world. But the real Tibetan people who live in Tibet, they can still practice their religion, which they are not, subjugated. But the only thing they have to be very careful is not to mention the word Dalai Lama, the 14th Dalai Lama, which is the Chinese are very sensitive. I don't know why they're so sensitive about a person, who has no nuclear power energy, nothing. He's just a simple spiritual man, and spreads good deeds to help people relieve their pain and their sufferings, But that's the way the Chinese are. So we have to be very careful when we're in Lhasa. We do not talk about the Dalai Lama at all. We really keep quiet about that. And only the times, there will be times where I will explain to you about his life later. When we are out of Lhasa, when we are into the Tibetan plateau, I can talk to you about the Dalai Lama's life itself. But when we're in Tibet, in the great cities of Lhasa and Shigatse, we have to be extremely careful because there are a lot of spies who are dressed up like monks, and they will come to you and try to, encourage you. So you have to be very, very careful. So, but the city of Lhasa is very interesting. The Bakhor Palace. There are hundreds of local people, and from children, from 4-year-old children to the 60 to 80 years old elderly people are prostrating into this gold in this most holiest temple in Bakhor called the Jokang, and that entire marketplace has incredible wonderful items to be sold, from Tibetan fabrics to yak meat to butter to lots of business trading is happening. At the same time, a lot of children are praying, a lot of families are prostrating, and the incense are burning. You can see the beautiful incense burning, and with the background, you can see the great Patala Palace, which is the winter palace of his Dalai Lama. So it's a very exciting city itself. I mean, you will be completely, you feel that you're on the roof of the world, especially the next day when you go into Potala Palace, because we have a certain time limit now because the Potala Palace is very old, and they only allow about 150 to 200 people a day to visit the entire palace itself within an hour. So, and inside there are all the tombs of the great Dalai Lamas, and they're into gold. I mean, it's quite a spectacular, and chambers of the lamas, the monks, and the yellow roofs are all where Dalai Lama's quarters are. So you can see the present 14 Dalai Lama's rooms, his meditation rooms, and from there you look down, you get a fantastic bird's eye view, and it was well explained by young husband, and Colonel Young husband, who was a great explorer and who came into Tibet in 1904 to march into Tibet, and had a war with the Tibetan people, and walked into Lhasa. When he walked into Lhasa city with his British cavalry, he had tears in his eyes. He said, "Oh, what have I done? These people are so gentle and they're so humble. We should not have this war taken place. We should have had a better, proper meeting with the 13th Dalai Lama, or so onwards. This is the time of 13th Dalai Lama." But then after that, the Colonel Young husband who came into Lhasa, he sat there. He had incredible friendship with the Tibetan people, and that's how the first telegraph system was set up from Lhasa all the way to the British India. And the other book you should read before you come to Tibet is The 7 Years in Tibet, the Henrik Harrer story, which is a spectacular book to read. And you can also watch a movie of Dalai Lama called The Kundun, which is available in in YouTube and everywhere. So if you read a couple of books, The Snow Line, as you can see behind my back, there are the lines. These are the snow lines. They're the spiritual guardians of the high mountain passes. So Lhasa itself is a great city. We have 2 universities there, or 3 universities, which is the Sera, the Drepong, and the Ganden. These are universities where scholars they get educated in medicine, in philosophy, and also and to test the present Dalai Lama who comes, the reincarnation. They have to sit for an exam when he's at the age of 18 in these 3 great universities, which holds over 10 to 15,000 monks. And the meditation hall is so spiritual. When you walk in there, you see this 3 big giant statues of probably 5 to 10 meters of the God of compassion and Buddha and all the monks. Today, there are only about 3 to 4,000 monks in each of these chapels. But in the heydays, they used to have over 15,000 monks in these chapels. You can imagine the chef, when he has to make tea and food. There's huge bowls where you can actually have a swimming in this bowl where they cook their food for them. You can visit the kitchen, and then you can just sit in this beautiful meditation hall and you can hear the monks chanting in the morning, in the afternoon, and you feel really very spiritual yourself. And you truly feel that you are in the roof of the world when you're there. I mean, it is literally a very high altitude roof, which has the golden roofs. So after visiting these three great the universities, and then it's time to actually leave Lhasa and go and see the wild west of Tibet, which is the Great Tibetan Plateau. So we drive from Lhasa heading towards the southwest and coming up to the Great Kambala Pass, and you look down into these beautiful turquoise lakes. One of the most beautiful lakes is called the Yamrokso at nearly 4,800 meters. And these lakes were very spiritual because this is how they used to find the next Dalai Lama's reincarnation. Their figure used to come into these lakes. And the great high lamas used to go in search of the next reincarnation lamas. They used to go into these lakes and meditate, and then they believed that an image would come of a house or image of where the next Dalai Lama was going to be born. They'll go and search for it, you see. So and then we see the beautiful yaks there, the Tibetan mastiff dogs. They are really very beautiful dogs, but you do have to be a bit careful about them. They can be quite vicious also. But then we drive through the lakes and through high passes and see the mountain goats. And the next part of the journey is going into the base camp of Mount Everest. Now, Everest was obviously found in the 1800 by Sir George Everest, a British surveyor from England. At the time, British were very much eager to be the first country to explore Antarctica, the Arctic, because they didn't become the first. So the next thing they explored was Everest, the highest mountain in the world. It became the third pole, you see. So, so they started their journey from 1920 onwards to start researching on Everest and also to climb Mount Everest. So Nepal was completely closed. Nepal only opened in 1950. So from 1920 till 1948, which is the last expedition, was all run from Darjeeling, from India, into the Great Tibetan Plateau and into the base of the north face of Everest. This is where George Mallory and Andrew Irvine disappeared in 1924. They never were found. Only one was found, George Mallory, after 79 years. His body was found under third steps. So there is still a lot of explorers looking for Andrew Irvine's body because he had the camera and he could have the next picture whether they reached the summit or not in 1924. So Everest has a historical part of it. And my grandfather's story, Tenzing's also story, came from here. He was born in the shadows of Everest, literally behind the east face of Mount Everest. My family came from there. And we drive literally to the base of Mount Everest. So you don't actually have to walk there. So this is quite a luxury for you, At 5,300 meters, at 17,500 feet, you stand there and you have to look literally up. You've got to stretch your neck and look up another 5 miles where the summit of Everest stands. And it is a perfect time for us to go there because it is also a time for the expeditions just getting ready to climb the north face. So we will see all the tents there and their preparation. And so we can go and have a chat. And there could be some of my friends who are climbing there who are still running. So we can go and drop into their mess tents, have a cup of tea or fresh coffee. And because the style of expedition has changed from 1921 till today. In those days, it was the last innocent climb of Everest. Every step was an exploration for them. Today, they are following in the footsteps of my grandfather and Hillary and some great other climbers. So things have changed because, those days they used to walk over more than a month with carrying all the food and the food and the gear to be brought into the base of Mount Everest. Today, everything comes in a truck. It drives all the way to the base camp, and then it's there for you. But it's very exciting for you actually to be there and be part of this historical face of Everest, the North Face, which I climbed in 2007. It is always the face that I always wanted to climb because it was part of my family history. And each time I came there, when I saw this incredible, massive face of Everest, I just imagined myself one day I'd like to be on top of that, top of Chomolungma, because we in Tibetan, we call Mount Everest Chomolungma, which means the goddess of long life. There are 5 sisters which are in the Himalayan region, and one of them is Everest. So Everest was named in the early 1800s, but there was name all from the 6th century. We call it Chomolungma or Myo Langsangma, which is literally the goddess of long life, which is worshipped. And I remember my grandfather used to tell me when he was young that his mother, my great grandmother, used to tell Tenzing that you see when he used to burn incense in the morning, you see that mountain. It's the highest mountain where no birds can fly over those mountains, you know. And literally, when my grandfather reached the summit of Everest in 1953, he placed a biscuit to offer the Chomolungma and thank Chomolungma for bringing him safely to the top. You know, after the 7th attempt of my grandfather, he tried 4 times from Tibet. From 1935, he started his first expedition to Everest with Eric Shipton. So this whole history of Everest is very much in my head. So when we're in base camp, we can really sit down there and I can explain to you really in detail about the history of this great mountain and what has become today in the 21st century of climbing, which obviously sometimes I don't particularly feel very happy at the way that it has changed. But still, I mean, it has incredible history itself. And for you to be there and to witness this massive wall of the north face of Everest is amazing. I mean, it's words cannot express how beautiful it is, and you are just a small ant there, and this massive wall stands in the background, which is Chomolungma itself. So that's why, and then from there we drive down into the base of to the border of Nepal, which is very exciting after seeing not much trees in Tibet, the wild Tibetan plateau, and all along the way we can meet the nomadic life of the Tibetan, the nomads. They have the tent set up, but and then we drive down into the lush green valleys connected to the border of Nepal, where the forest appears. And then from there, we drive back into Kathmandu, where we finish our tour. So these 2 tours are really, really amazing. I mean, they have incredible history. They have a wonderful sense of this spirituality of for yourself to be there, especially Tibet. You know, I mean, there are stories which we do not want to hear about it, how the Chinese treated the Tibetans. But today, the Tibetan people are happy. They are progressing. They are no more starving. You know, they're doing their own great farming culture, agriculture, which is growing barley, and the Tibetan monks are there. So you see there's one particular place where we go to Sera Monastery, which is the Crystal Monastery, where we can see the debating happening. So the debating of the Tibetan monks are very essential so that they can debate about religious part of it, the philosophical part of it. And there's a teacher. You just sit there and you listen. Sometimes it becomes like they're fighting each other, but very loud and very boisterous. But it is purely to do with religion. So it is not physical. It is purely a mental test of each monk's how intelligent or how compassionate or how tolerant they are about the philosophy of Tibet, of Buddhism itself. So Nepal and Tibet really works together itself. And that's why we chose Nepal first and then into Tibet, so that you can see the greenery and the wildlife and the different cultures of Nepal. Over 37 different ethnic groups here, and then from there we're heading into the highlands, into the wild, barren Tibetan plateau, where we can see the monasteries and the temples and the chapels and the deities of Buddhas, and finally finishing at the base camp of Mount Everest, the historical part of Everest for you, which I will explain when we get there. So you will surely enjoy these both trips because they are well connected, and it is mentally, physically, emotionally, spirituality. You have all the sorts of enjoyment when you finish the tour, and when you go back home, you probably feel that you are still in the roof of the world. There you are.
Tashi, would you happen to have any photos or video you want to share with anybody?
Now, videos. Oh, let me just give me a few minutes. I will need to go into my. I did have. How do I do the video thing? I'm not very much into this.
Yeah, so on the bottom of your Zoom, it'll say screen share. I'm going to make you the
Just
host.
let me. Okay, let me go. Let me go into my. Where we are. Photos. No, not.
Tashi, we did have a couple questions. I don't know if you can multitask.
Okay.
Someone,
All right.
Mindy Blasky asked, how do you get into the internal areas, and is Nepal's internal flight safe? Are Nepal's internal flights safe?
Domestic flights are safe. I mean, we use Buddha Airlines or the Yeti. They are safe. They are probably pretty well maintained. Our last groups we flew. Obviously, there are a few. We're not flying into a place called Lukla, which is the most dangerous airport in the world, which is up on the Everest trek. But just domestic flights are very safe. There's not an issue at all.
So we're not flying to that place where the airline crashed recently?
Flying into Pokhara, but Pokhara is an international airport which has been rebuilt. We fly from Kathmandu to a place called the Bardia Nepal Ganj, which is down in the plains of Nepal. So not to worry. I mean, it is safe. It's not a problem. It's safe to fly during domestic flights. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nepal's airlines are very strict. They are becoming they scrutinize a lot. They do make sure that the two big domestic airlines, the Buddha Airlines and Yeti Airlines, they are checked every month, so they are well maintained now. So, and Patty was with us.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, I was on the trip and everything, the flights, the landings, the planes, everything were super modern, no problems at all. I was completely comfortable flying and landing on all of our flights, so it wasn't a problem. I thought about it too on the front end, wondering if how comfortable we would be, but it was not an issue at all for us.
For anybody who's a late comer, that's Patty Collins. She's the wildlife safari coordinator for both of the Nepal and the Tibet trip for Cheesemans Ecology safaris. Tashi, I have a couple other questions if you're ready to field them.
Please carry on.
Yeah. Okay. So, SK Gorman wanted to know how do you adapt to the altitude? How do travelers adapt to the altitude once they get there?
The adaptation of altitude is a very simple way of process. It's basically that's the reason why we walk in Nepal for 3 to 4 days. We start at 900 meters and then we slowly go up to just under 2,000 meters. So your body naturally acclimatizes pretty well. And people who are over 45, 40 years over, your system is automatically quite slow. So the best way is to walk slowly, drink lots of water, and you get acclimatized well. If you try to speed and things like that, the younger people are the ones who get altitude sickness very fast. So that's why this for 3 to 4 days, the pole journey is so important for us. You don't realize that your body is acclimatizing slowly and slowly and slowly. And by the time we get into Lhasa, you're perfectly fine. I mean, you will still find a little bit of because you're flying from Kathmandu to straight to 12,000 feet, you'll find that you might get a slight nauseous or a headache, but that's common. But most of the people who have done the trek in Nepal should not feel that when you get into Lhasa. But the people who have not done that trek and who are coming straight to Tibet itself, and then you do have to take your time. Time is the essence of acclimatation. You cannot speed. You just take your time slowly. And when we're driving into Lhasa, out of the Lhasa city, we have full oxygen with us. Every vehicle has oxygen masks and cylinders, and we are fully equipped with medical facilities when we are out of Lhasa itself. So that's just for our security itself. Yeah.
And then Lisa Davis wanted to know, she said, how have the buildings in Durbar squares and other historic structures in
For the
Bhutan?
building, the Durbar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, since the 20, was it the earthquake? Are they
Yeah,
all?
2015. Yeah, since the 2015, the devastating earthquake, most of the buildings are now been repaired, and the Bodha, the big stupa, the Durbar Square, to the lots of good funding. So about 90% most of the buildings have been reconstructed again. So it's good for you to come and have a look at it now. Yeah. Yeah.
And then is it ever still pretty crowded?
Well, from Nepal side, yes, but from Tibet side, when we go there, it will be not that crowded. So it'll be really nice to visit at the time of spring. So yeah, but for Nepal side, it is extremely crowded because it's the most popular route, and we get nearly over 500. This year we had over 200, 300 climbers and over nearly 200 Sherpas helping the climbers to fulfill their dreams. So yeah, Nepal side is very crowded. Tibet side is not that crowded. That's why if I like to climb again, I like to go from the Tibet side. It's much more relaxing from there. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then now, if you have any pictures or photos, photos or video, I'm sure people would love to take a look at them.
Videos.
Ivan asked if there are any issues getting into Tibet. Ivan, I'm not sure if you mean from China or just in general getting into Tibet.
It's open right now, so it was locked down because of the COVID, and they have now open for business. So most of your visa for Tibet, we do that for you from Nepal side. It is not actually a visa; it's like an alien permit they call it. So it is. So we do need your passports before in hand, which gets sent to the Chinese intelligence in Lhasa, and then they approve it and they check your name to see whether you have been very pro-Tibetan demonstrator. If they have you in their black book, the diary, obviously you will not be allowed to come into Tibet. So but I'm sure most of you are not in that black book of the Chinese thing. So and then they give us a piece of paper from our agent in Lhasa. We have an agent in Lhasa who are pure Tibetan people who run the show, not the Chinese. So we always use the Tibetan agency. And then they send us a piece of paper which gets sent to the Chinese consulate in Kathmandu. And that's where we get an alien permit with your names and your passport number. You don't actually get a stamp, but you can ask for a stamp when you fly into Lhasa. But the other good thing is that you can get a stamp in your passport from the base camp of Mount Everest. There is a post office there, which is really exciting. To get a stamp, and you can also actually you can also write a postcard and drop a postcard there because from Mount Everest, base camp. A lot of people don't get postcards from the base of Mount Everest, which is really exciting, and get your passport stamp too, which is really nice to have a stamp at the base camp Mount Everest. I've just got this slideshow here, which is actually the one I do about the lectures. I can just show you about the people and itself. So how do I go? I go into where to download?
See where it says screen share at the bottom of the Zoom window.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Where is screen share? I got a model. No. Here we are. Got it.
Is it working?
Yeah. One participant, multiple participants can share it and me.
Tashi, do you see the green share button?
But do I have to go into the I'm not.
Oh,
Let me. Share. Okay, now we get there. Okay, hold on. We're getting there. Share.
Taji, while we're waiting, what's the terrain like in Nepal overall?
Do not ask me about is it flat, because Nepal is 90% mountain, up and down. So we do have soft terrains. We have moderate terrains, which is rolling hills, and then finally we have the extreme terrains, which can go really higher, which is over 4,000, 5,000 meters, which is high alpine zone. So most of our visitors, our guests who are coming into this area, you will experience from light to moderate, and there will be some sections where you have to climb, say, 100 meters up through zigzag slowly. So, but it's comfortable because you're not in the high altitude zone. So you're in the moderate altitude zone. So
trails are well marked, so you don't need to worry about that, and it's safe. So where we are here, privacy. Right? Yeah. Keep asking these questions.
I can talk a little bit about the walk because my perspective, not being a mountaineer, is a little bit different than Tashi's perspective since he climbed Everest multiple times. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Yeah. So the trekking was, there was quite a bit of up and down, quite a few steps, but we went slowly, and we had the assistance of the Sherpas. We had some bridges that we crossed that were kind of, fun with bamboo bottoms, and I felt really safe the whole time. It was a little bit more physically challenging than I expected. I did alter the descriptions a little bit in the itinerary to kind of account for that. But we usually walked maybe 2 to 4 hours a day, slowly, taking in the scenery, which was just breathtaking. So the rest stops were just, otherworldly in their beauty. And so it was just a lovely, lovely scenic walk. And then we had great, comfortable lodging to rest in the afternoons and evenings. But yeah, it wasn't easy from my perspective, but it's definitely doable, and just one of the most spectacular things I've ever seen.
Taji, I can do some photos. I'll share some my screen and share some photos, and you can just talk.
Yeah, not really. Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay. You've got all the pictures I sent you with the wildlife, and yeah. There you go.
I'll present them, and you just talk about them.
Yeah. So this is the beautiful the Bakor, which is the heart of the Tibetan people in Lhasa. So we call it Bakor. The Bakor is the main. You can see the city, and yeah, that's the Bakor place. Every morning and evening, there are over 100, 200 to 300 people just walking around doing Kora, which we call it the meditation. We go clockwise, and we can just be part of it. We can just walk in there, and it's really nice in the late afternoon or late early morning to go there and watch the people with their prayer beads in the left hand, and on the right hand they've got the prayer money wall, which is a small thing which rotates around. So you can see all that. It's really, really spectacular. But this is the great Bakor city, yeah. So these are the butter lamps. We call it and every chapel, you can see this is made from the stone, and they are really big butter lamps burn every day in the chapels. It is very important to have the butter lamps burning 24 hours, so that and then you can also watch a lot of the pilgrims who are coming every morning into the chapels, because when we are in the monastery, you will see a lot of the local families coming in and bringing in their thermos, which has butter, and then they pour the butter on top of this big butter lamp. So the butter lamp is burning. It's just pay of respect, and it's also very important for us to see things very clearly in our daily life. So the butter lamps are very, very important. And then there are 4 border walls. And this is a very classic scenery of the yaks of expedition people going up, carrying some of their clothing or also their food, heading up towards the base of Mount Everest. Because and the roads are now, this is a very old picture that I took, but now the roads are all black top, so it's much more smoother for you. And the mountains you can see behind, on the other side is Nepal, and on this side is Tibet. So that is the mountain called it is called Milongse, which is about 7,900 meters. So it's nearly about 26,000 feet above sea level. And where these yaks are walking, you are literally about 16,800 feet above sea level. So it is quite amazing scenery to see these yaks, And this is a very beautiful place called the Gangse. You can see the fortress at the back. That fortress was the Yangtze Fort. In 1904, this is where the great battle between the British Army, the Colonel Young husband, and the Tibetan Army had a fight here. The British came from the south, and the Tibetan obviously it was no match to the British artillery. And the Tibetans had this very old ancient gun where, the muskets, whereas the British had much highly advanced. So the war, it took, I think, about an hour or so, and it never really went much higher than that. But a lot of casualty was there from the Tibetan side. That's why the young husband was very, at that time, he obviously at the time of the war, I guess he was bigger aggressive. But then later on, when he saw the reality of the Tibetan army, he felt very sad, and also did not feel good that this war should not have begun. And so he started helping all the Tibetan army with their medical facilities. And then then they walked from here to Lhasa, and then they made the 13th Dalai Lama, and the first High Commission of the British was appointed in Lhasa itself. And then from there, they built the telegraph poles all the way to Darjeeling, to India. So when we drive, we may see a few remnants of the old telegraph poles, but this fortress is still there. And this is called the Kumbum. It is one of the largest stupas in Tibet. It was built, architect by the great scholar, artist from Nepal called Arniko. And inside this stupa, we can walk in there. There are over 50,000 mural paintings of Buddhas and other parts. So we can go right up to the top where the rings are, the 13 rings, which are the 13 steps of the enlightenment to be enlightened in your life. So here's a beautiful lake. So you can see the Yamdrokso Lake. This is one of the most spectacular lake and one of the largest turquoise lakes in Tibet. In the middle is the island. So we drive, it takes about nearly from Lhasa to Gangse, to that fortress. It's about 6 to 7 hours drive, but it is one of the most beautiful drive that you ever take in life. You literally do feel that you are on the roof of the world, And this is where you can see the yaks, the mountain dogs, the Tibetan masters, there are some sections where the locals have brought these yaks where you can ride on top of them and take a picture. They've been tamed, but it is really beautiful. And we drive literally to the base of those mountains in the far distance there. And that's where you can't see Everest from here, but those are the range of the Himalayan ranges all the way through. Yeah. We have the next one, please. Yeah, so this is one of the most, this is how the monks sit down and do their prayers in the morning and the evening. On the right, you can see the god of compassion, Cherise, Buddha, the present Buddha. We have the past Buddha, the present Buddha, and the future Buddha, you see. And then we have this monk sitting here. So you can actually join them. You can just you can sit in the corner and just feel the vibe. The beautiful, the meditation of the monks, It is so spiritual there. And you have to be a bit careful when you're taking photography. Sometimes they do not allow you, and sometimes they will allow you, but you have to pay a fee. You have to pay a certain amount of fee, say from 30 yuan to 50 yuan, which is about say $15 to $20 or $30. But I would pay respect if they're meditation, not to take photographs, because they can get distracted, and we do not want to disturb them while. But later on, if they're not there, you can take pictures, and it's quite spectacular to see these photographs. And we're also going to one of the chapels, which is this old text printed in gold and also handwritten. There's over 1,000 volumes of these books of Buddha's life story and the teachings of Buddha, which is kept in this. It has only been opened for about a few years back, so you can actually go and see this incredible library of the Tibetan text, the spiritual books, which is in the monastery of Sakya. Yeah, this is the view you want to see. So when we're in a place called Tingri, when you're driving into the base of Mount Everest, I do wake you up quite early morning at 4 o'clock. The reason why I wake you up is because you want to see this sunrise on top of Mount Everest. I mean, literally, it is the highest mountain in the world. And this is exactly what Mallory and Irvine and Colonel Bruce from 1921, when the first explorers came, they had to walk literally over miles and miles to get to this place called Pangla, which is the height of 5,300 meters. So not to worry, we'll have lots of warm drinks for us, and we drive right to the top of the hill and sit and watch the sun rising on the great Chomolungma itself. On the left is the Lhotse, and the rear, right in the middle, you can see the pyramid. That is Mount Everest, which is the entire north face you can see. And we drive right onto the base of that mountain there. So we spend about, it is cold. It'll be about minus 10 or 15 degrees here on top of this pass. So we make sure that we are well dressed up. So there will be a good clothing list for you when you're coming to Tibet. So make sure it's like your winter. If you're living in Alaska or somewhere or in other parts, so you don't need to bring very warm clothing here for this particular part. But once we drop down into the base camp and when the sun comes out, the temperature is again going to be about, say, just 15 to 16 degrees above centigrade. So this is, I don't know much in Fahrenheit, but it's much comfortable temperature. So this is what you want to see at the base of Mount Everest. You can imagine that. That's a spectacular face. I mean, that is the entire north face. And if you see right on the top of the left ridge of the north face, you can see that the second step where Mallory's body was found in 79 years back and in 1980, something like that. And then there is a white mark of snow ridge. That's 8,400 meters above sea level. That's where we sleep. We try to sleep anyway, or try to stay warm as possible before we leave for the summit bit. And that's 400 meters above sea level. That's the highest point any human being can pitch a tent there and try to rest there. So that is an incredible face. And at the bottom of this, you can see the dry moraine. That's where all the camps will be, the expedition camps. So you just can't walk in there by yourself, okay? So you have to be very careful. I will try to get a special permission for us to go and visit the climbers, because they are very strict about it, because they've got all their very precious clothing and gear, so they don't like people just wandering around the campsite. So they're very particular about that. So these are the buses. This is the summer palace of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So in the wintertime, this poor young kid who His Holiness used to live in that very cold Potala Palace. And then in the summertime, at the time of, say, May, June, July, August, he comes into this beautiful palace called Summer Palace, where there are lakes and fountains, and he can play with ducks, and there's lots of tea parties in the olden days when Tibet was independent. The British, when they came in, they used to have a lot of high tea parties here, and there's lots of dances performed by the high society. And also, I was told that there was a Yeti in this palace kept a Yeti, the abdominal snowman. But I think it is more like a mountain bear, which is kept in there, in this place. And you can also see the Dalai Lama's old vehicles, which were presented to him from India, So when he started learning to drive, he had lots of crashes. And I think Henry Hara, the 7 years in Tibet, he taught the Lama how to drive vehicles. So the summer palace is very, very important for a lot of the Tibetan people. They come here. We can go inside and visit His Holiness's special home where he used to entertain international guests. And it is a very spectacular place, the summer palace. Yeah. Here you can see the monks with their beautiful hat, the yellow hat. Now, again, I'll try to explain to you about the red hat, the yellow hat, because we have 4 different sects in Buddhism. The Nyingma, which is the oldest, the Kyrgyz, Gelugpa, which is the yellow hat that came in the 12th century, the 6th, the 12th, and the 14th. So these are the different centuries where the different sect came in. But overall, they follow the same philosophy of Buddha's teachings. Yeah. This is the called Jokang, which is where the first Tibetan king was inaugurated in this place, in the Samye monastery, in the Samye area in Sedang. So we will walk here slowly, and it's a very gradual ascent. And then you can also take a horse ride if you want, but you can just walk slowly up to the top, and then from there you get a fantastic vista of the entire valley of Tibet. So this is where there's a historical place. This is where we start our journey from, and this is where we will see where the first king of Tibet was inaugurated here. From here onwards, from here they moved the capital from Tedang to Lhasa. Lhasa was the second. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's my grandfather there with his wonderful smile.
Now the time to talk about your grandfather, Tashi. Go ahead.
Well,
Everybody wants to hear about it.
Yeah, he's he was born in the shadows of Everest, literally. He was one of the 14 member of the families. Came from an extremely poor in a valley called Moe. He escaped his village because of poverty and came to the Rumbuk monastery in the base camp of Mount Everest to become a monk. But I think he only spent there about 3 to 4 months, and then at the age of 8, he ran away from there to Nepal, into the high mountains of Nepal, and into the valley of Solukhumbu to the south face of Mount Everest. And there he started working as a yak herder for quite a wealthy man up in Kumjung. And then those days, most of the Sherpas, because there was no work of mountaineering from the Nepal side, so a lot of the Sherpas were walking over a month to the far east, to the India side, to a place called Darjeeling. Darjeeling is the queen of the hill stations where the great tea is, but it's also the base camp of Mount Everest. That's where all the Everest expedition Sherpas were recruited from there. So my grandfather from there at the age of 14, 15, he left from there, went to Darjeeling. And at the age of 18, he got his first work with Eric Shipton as a porter. And on that expedition, literally they had to walk from the Tibet side to his village and down into the base of Mount Everest. So for him, it was like revisiting his own homeland, he's visiting his own people and coming into base camp. And Eric Shipton wrote in his book about his Everest. He said Tenzing had this incredible smile in his face. He was exceptionally quite tall compared to other Sherpas. And it seems like he had 4 lungs. He was so strong, I mean, he could run up the mountains because, that's where he was born. And then, the shadows of Everest was his playground as a young child, So he excelled himself so well that he became very different to the other Sherpas. He was destined to be a leader. He wanted to do something. He wanted to prove to the white people that he had the authority and he had the motivation and he had the inspiration to help them to climb this mountain. So from there onwards, Tenzing was recognized really well in every expedition from 1935, 36, 37, 38. The last expedition was 1948 with Earl Denman from Canadian expedition, and then in 1949 he reached at a height of 7,900 meters, literally, and he was also awarded the Tiger of the Medal. It's called the Tiger of the Snow, which was a medal which any Sherpas who went higher than 7,000 meters, like over 25,000 feet above sea level. So that medal was given by the British explorers, So that was a very proud moment for him to achieve that particular medal. But and then later on, when China, the Cultural Revolution started and Tibet closed down, then 1950, Everest was reopened from Nepal's side. Then 51, there was a reconnaissance by the Americans and by the British to see the south face of Everest. But in 1952, the Swiss got the permission to climb Everest. Nepal was very strict. They only gave one permit a year to one country to climb. Now the British were becoming very desperate because they really wanted to climb this mountain because they found the mountain. They were responsible for literally they were literally the country which found the highest mountain in the world. So then my grandfather in 52, they just reached 600 feet below the summit of Everest. They could not succeed with Raymond Lombay. Then later on in 1953, the British got the expedition and history was written by Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing, who reached the summit of Everest. So my grandfather's really entire history actually started from Tibet and then came into Nepal. And he spent over 7 expeditions on Everest. On the 7th time, he reached the summit of Chomolungma. And since then, he opened the classic southeast route of Everest to hundreds of people. Today, I think there's over 7,000 to 8,000 climbers who have reached the summit of Mount Everest. And I think in 1953 to 1960 was probably the last innocent climber of Everest. I would say that because they were the great explorers, and every step was something different to them, new to them. Whereas today we are just following in the footsteps of Everest. So in our family, my grandfather, he was extremely very humble about his climb. He never thought he would become such a great hero, but he was very simple. He inspired us. He actually didn't want us to climb any mountains. He said, "I've already done the climbing part. You guys have a good education and have a different career." But my mind was already set up, and my mother, she's the eldest daughter in our family, and she was also a climber, and she was a great adventurer. She died 2 years back, so she also inspired me to go into the mountains. And I didn't really want to go into university, but I did for her and got my degree. But I went back to the mountains and I fulfilled my own dreams of climbing Everest 3 times on the mountain. And it is certainly a great feeling to be on top of Chomolungma, because first thing for me was very spiritual. It was very emotional for my family, to see my family history down into the Tibetan plateau. And the third thing is to see the curvature of the world coming around. I mean, you can literally see the world literally under your feet. And since then, my uncle and myself, we are the only 2 people who follow in the footsteps of Tenzing. And we spend a lot of, we climb a lot of mountains, and still do a lot of adventure, and also do a lot of philanthropist work here in Nepal, where we have schools and we educate the children. We start to stop the child trafficking in this area, and growing coffee and helping. So there's a lot of things to give back. After 70th anniversary of Everest, today the Hillary and the Tenzing family, we have spent a lot of hours helping the community of the mountain people of Nepal. we educate the underprivileged people. So it is all due to the great inspiration of Hillary and Tenzing, my grandfather itself, especially my grandfather, because he was not an educated man. And he had a very tough time communicating. My mother, later on, who was educated, she helped her father to communicate with people and learning different languages, speaking with, meeting people. So, education was very important. My grandfather thought later on that all his grandchildren and his children should have good education. It was the most essential part of the life. And also, Jamling and myself, we took up the adventure part of it. And today we keep the light as high as Chomolungma Everest of my grandfather. Yeah.
Tashi, what was your grandfather like as a grandfather?
He was a normal. I mean, just like a normal grandfather. Everywhere, I actually did not know that Tenzing was the real Tenzing who climbed Everest. He used to come every morning at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to our home, and he was well dressed up. Very much like the Swiss, with the boots and his beautiful tucked up shirt, and he had his dowry, and he had this mountain cap, and then he would come because my mother was very close to him, and we had to wake up really. He would not like us to see in bed sleeping. So like today, I woke up at 4:30, just getting prepared to be with you all. So we would jump out of the bed and try to have a big smile in our face and say hi to granddad. But it took me a lot of time because I thought he was just a normal my grandfather. He was not the man who actually summited Mount Everest. And I was to ask my mother, can you show me who the real Tenzing is? This man who climbed Everest, who made our Sherpas so popular, so famous. And my mother used to tell me, he's the man who, he's the one who climbed. He's your Tenzing. He's your grandfather. He's the boss, the man. I said, are you sure? So then I later on, went to school and I started seeing his nature. He was just a very simple, very humble man. He always had this wonderful smile. He would sit with anybody. He had no issue with hierarchy or system. He would sit with the porter. He would sit in the market and talk to people. He would, he was amazing person. I mean, if you ever had met my grandfather, he would just inspire you with his smile. He doesn't even have to talk to you. He had such that incredible aroma. You feel that this guy was, because when he was young, I was told by the Lama when we went to visit his birthplace, when I took my mother there and my group, we had everyone in emotional tears in their eyes. I had to carry a lot of tissue papers to make sure that, this is where Tenzing was born, this mountain hut there. And we met the old Lama, and he said to us that, when Tenzing was very young, he had seen a snake which had surrounded over his body and over his head. And that is a very auspicious sign, which we believe. And that Lama saying that this boy will do great one day, And certainly, I mean, that's what And when I wrote the book about my grandfather, Tenzing and the Sherpas of Everest, I had to visit this place all the time to get a lot of information, a lot of from the remaining families of Tenzing who still live there, because we still have another half of our family living in the shadows of Everest today at this village, and I go there and meet them every year. So this was a very important research area for me, to know the real life of Tenzing, what actually happened here, and how the Sherpas migrated in the early 6th to 8th century into the kingdom of Nepal. Because the Sherpas are pure Tibetans. They come from Tibet. The word Sherpa just means people from the east, you see. So Tenzing's life was quite incredible. That's why if you read his book, Life Story, there's a Tenzing After Everest, or written by James Ullman, Tenzing and the Sherpas of Everest, which is written by myself. This is book you can get in Amazon. So he was an incredible man. I mean, I later on, when I knew that this guy was the real Tenzing, I had tears. I mean, I wanted to know more about him. I wanted to do more research about him. I wanted to climb Mount Everest. I wanted to climb Chomolungma. and make my family proud. So that was the kind of man he was, you know.
Did you ever have a chance to climb with him at all?
Yeah, we exactly. So this is when we had school holidays after climbing Everest, and you know he was associated with a company from America, the Great Lindblad, we can call it. He used to bring groups into Nepal, into Tibet, and into Darjeeling, and and my grandfather was like one of the tour leaders, and these group used to come, and he used to take us too on the walk, you know, and we did this 8 days to 10 days hike into Sikkim. And there's one incident I must tell you, it's very interesting. We were hiking with there's the first time we had seen American guests coming into our home, you know, having high tea, and we were still, you know, at the age of 12, 14, and we were really eager to see meet new faces and new friends. So we were hiking up into the jungles of Sikkim, and we came up to the Alpine region, and there was this group of I was there too, you know, and I can remember this vividly. Uh, there was this group of yaks rushing down, you know, charging at our guest. And some of the guests were yelling, you know, what to do. They didn't know what to do. And my grandfather, obviously, he was born with the yaks. You know, he used to look after these yaks. So he got his ice axe and he went charging up. And I don't know what he said in his language, in the Sherpa or Tibetan language or yak language. Those yaks just moved different ways, you know. They did not come to the group. And I was saying, wow, that's really, really cool, man. You know, when you're young, you think, oh, that's my grandfather. He was a good man. From there, I knew that this guy had some spiritual or some, you know, mental power in him. You know, I mean, he was born destined to be a yak herder, a mountain climber, and you know, and a very humble human being. You know, I mean, such inspirations were very clearly in our frame, and we were so lucky to have him as a grandfather. You know, so there you are.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Tosh. Folks, I hate to do it, but we're at an hour and a half. I don't want to keep everybody here all night. I'm going to share one final screen with you guys. In the comments, I have posted. Hold on, I'm about to post. Where did my chat go? Patty, can you post it in the comment or the chat? So in the chat, I'm going to post the links to our 2 trips. I know there were 2 questions that we didn't get to. One was about the terrain and one was about the flights, but all that is answered in the itinerary. So we have a physical fitness area in the itineraries as well as climate. Patty, I'm going to depart here. I have a meeting I have to go to. Patty's going to take over. If anybody has any questions specifically about the trip itself for Tashi or Patty, they can field it. It's limited space, so when it fills, it fills. If anybody has any questions after you guys leave, you can always reach us via our website or info@cheesemans.com. We appreciate everybody, honestly, for coming today. It was a massive turnout. Tashi, thank you so much for the stories and the input and the insights on Everest, Nepal, and Tibet. It was super awesome. I want to thank everybody for coming out. I'm also going, this is being recorded, so I'm hoping to get this up on our YouTube channel tomorrow. It depends on the video editing because it did go pretty long, but I will be posting that on our social as well as sending out an email. So if you're on our email list, you'll get that as well. So you can get notified when that will go live. So you can watch it as many times as you'd like.
Cool.
Yes.
Sound good?
Yeah. Yep. Thanks, Adam.
Awesome. I'm going to tap out. Patty, I'm going to pass the controls to you, okay?
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Yeah. I think we can probably take Mindy's. It was your question about the plane, right?
Yeah, I'm just worried. I was reading about this airplane and the terrain and the pilots, and there's a specific plane that crashed that maybe was technically, I don't know. So anyway, that, because we were going to go on this trip, and then my friend Eden went and we didn't go, and that was because of COVID. But now then there was that plane crash that really spooked me. But I really wanted to go to Nepal, not so much Tibet, but Nepal and the trek in the mountains. And anyway,
come.
Yeah. Do you remember Eden and her daughter went on that.
Oh
she
yeah,
was just
Eden Rose and Kate. Yeah. They
yes,
had a great
exactly.
time. Yeah.
And we were gonna go on that same trip, and it's because of us that she went.
Okay.
And then we backed out because of COVID,
Yes.
and then the plane crashed, and I just really got spooked. So I want to hear about the planes.
Oh, don't worry, they're in good hands now. So you don't have to worry. Oh yeah, you were meant to be with the Eden Rose and thing. Yeah, that's
Yes,
right.
that's right. And she was
Yeah,
so
we had a great
happy.
trip. That's where we saw 8 tigers. You missed the tigers. We
I
saw
know. I heard all about it. I heard
You
all
missed all
about
8
it.
tigers. We had such a great sighting of tigers on those day. Yeah, there was
Yes,
just 3 of us. That was a private trip. Yeah, and then we had
yes.
Kate Kathleen who came from Oregon. Origin. Are you from Origin area? Yeah, Oregon.
Oregon. No, we're
Oregon.
from Seattle, Washington, but
Seattle.
she's
Oh, okay.
she's from Oregon.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
but it was we were going to go to Bhutan, Cheesemans, Bhutan, and then I tacked on a trip, that private trip to Nepal because we were going to be so close, and and then we couldn't go because COVID.
You can do it now. So you can do next year or year after. I think family will help you. So there you are.
Yes. Yeah.
And I look forward to seeing you.
Like I said, everything seemed like totally safe with with the airlines. I was as comfortable as I am in the States. It wasn't. I know that was that crash happened not long before we went on our trip in 2023.
Yeah.
If anything, I think after something like that, everything just gets revamped, and the safety becomes just such a huge focus that we're
Yeah, but I guess there's a new airport in Pokhara, and
That's beautiful.
and so there was, when I was reading about it, there's like a lot of birds, and they might cause a problem. I mean, anyway, I'm just like really uptight about it.
Yeah,
Don't worry,
I understand. Yeah,
come. I will look forward to seeing you both. Yeah.
Yeah, we would like to, because Eden Rose, she just was raving about the trip.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, good.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
let it go.
Thank you. I just enjoyed all the stories you told.
Wonderful.
Really amazing.
Welcome.
Okay. Oh, also, someone has asked about the trips overlapping. They actually don't truly overlap. What happens when we post our trips, we include travel time. And since when Nepal ends, you're already in Kathmandu ready for Tibet. It actually you would leave for Tibet the day everybody else left Nepal to go back home. So it works logistically. I know it kind of doesn't make sense the way we post the travel time included, but since you're already there, you don't have to travel.